Hello everyone. Children, we are continuing with the chapter that is circulatory system, and this is the B part of circulatory system. In the previous session we have studied about the circulatory system. What is a circulatory system? Children, you have seen that the system that includes heart, blood vessels together forms a circulatory system. Now children, in the previous video, you have studied about the composition of blood, that the blood is made up of plasma and the formed elements. Plasma, that is of straw colored fluid, and inside this it is sticky, slightly heavier than water, and it includes blood protein, inorganic salts, digested food, then waste materials, hormones, antitoxins, and many gases. And the formed cells, they are of three types: red blood cells, white blood cells, and blood platelets. Children, the biological name of red blood cells is erythrocytes, white blood cells, that is leukocytes, and blood platelets or thrombocytes. Yesterday, we have studied about the red blood cells or the erythrocytes. This erythrocyte is made up of a complex compound, that is hemoglobin, which contains an iron. Now, red blood cells are biconcave and disc shaped. Then they act as a carrier of oxygen from lungs to the tissues. And you have seen, children, that the mature red blood cells are denucleated, or they do not have any nucleus. And the reason behind them is that it increases the surface area, volume, to absorb more oxygen. The space inside the red blood cells is increased, and this red blood and more red blood cells can be accommodated. So today, children, we will study about the white blood cells. The biological term for the white blood cells are leukocytes. Now, they fight against germs and other foreign bodies and thus protect the body from diseases. So, children, the main function of the white blood cells or the leukocytes is to fight against any foreign body or any germ that has entered your body. They fight against them and protect your body against the diseases. Or we can call them as the soldiers of our body. As the soldiers, they protect our country from invasions. In the same way, these white blood cells, they act as the soldiers and they protect our body from many diseases. WBCs are colorless and they have a nucleus. See, you have seen that red blood cells, they are red in color because of the hemoglobin, which has an iron. Now, WBCs are colorless, as their name suggests that they are white blood cells, so they are colorless and they have a nucleus. Red blood cells, mature red blood cells, they are denucleated or they do not have nucleus. But here, children, these white blood cells, they have nucleus. They are larger than RBCs. If we will compare them, WBCs are larger in size than the RBCs, but are fewer in number. See, RBCs are more in number than the WBC. But if we will compare their size, WBCs are larger than the RBCs. So in 1 cubic millimeter of blood, there are near about 5 millions of RBCs and 5,000 to 7,000 WBCs are present. Many of the WBCs are made in the bone marrow. So these WBCs are also made in the bone marrow. They live from a few hours to many days depending on the type. So there are different types of WBC that we will study, and these WBCs are also made in the bone marrow. As we have seen, the red blood cells, they are also made in the long bones, or we can say in the bone marrows. In the same way, these WBCs are also made in the bone marrow. They live from a few hours to many days depending on the type. Now, we have seen, children, the lifespan of red blood cell is of between 100 to 120 days, and here they live from a few hours to many days. When they travel along the blood, they are more or less spherical. Now, their shape, they are more or less spherical when they flow in the when they travel along the blood in the blood vessels. But they flatten and continuously change their shape along the inner walls of the blood vessels. Now, as you all know, children, that the blood flows in the blood vessels, and these WBCs are present in the blood or in the plasma. When this blood flows in the blood vessels, what happens? They change their shape. They show amoeboid movement which help them to squeeze out of the capillaries. Now, amoeboid movement, children, you have seen, you know about amoeba. See, this is an amoeba. And while this amoeba moves, it continuously changes its shape like this. So while moving along the blood vessels, they show amoeboid movement. That means they change their shape, and because of this changing shape help them to squeeze out of the capillaries are very fine. I told you, children, that there are three types of blood vessels: arteries, which carries the oxygenated blood; veins, which carries deoxygenated blood; and capillaries. They are very fine capillaries, very fine blood vessels. They are known as the capillaries. And this amoeboid movement helps the white blood cells to squeeze out of the capillaries, to come out of the capillaries into tissues, and this process is known as diapedesis. This is very important, children. Underline that the amoeboid movement helps the white blood cells to squeeze out of the capillaries into the tissues, and the process is known as diapedesis. So this is the definition of diapedesis. Amoeboid movement. See, this is amoeba. This is amoeba, but the shape of the white blood cells is just like that. It changes its shape, and during its movement, it continuously changes shape, and this change of shape helps them to squeeze out. Squeeze means to come out of the capillaries into the body tissues, and this process is known as diapedesis. Now we will see the different types of WBCs. WBCs are classified into two types. They are granulocytes and granulocytes. Granulocytes means they have no granules, and granulocytes means they have granules. Now we will see granulocytes. These WBCs have no granules in the cytoplasm and are produced in the bone marrow. So agranulocytes means the WBCs are without any granules. Their cytoplasm does not contain any granules, and they are produced in the bone marrow, within the marrow cavity of the long bones. Children, you know, bones are filled with the marrow, and these are produced in the bone marrow. Now, agranulocytes WBCs are of two kinds: lymphocytes, which have round nucleus. Now, agranulocytes WBCs are divided into two kinds: lymphocytes and monocytes. Now we'll see what is the difference between the lymphocytes and the monocytes. Lymphocytes which have round nucleus. So lymphocytes, they have round nucleus. You can see here lymphocytes. See the shape of the lymphocyte, and you can see here inside this, they have a round nucleus. Now, second one is the monocytes, which have horseshoe shaped or kidney shaped nucleus. Now monocyte, see here, this is the shape of the monocyte. Inside this monocyte, this is a nucleus, and the shape of the nucleus is horseshoe shaped. The shape of the nucleus is horseshoe shaped. So agranulocytes, WBCs, are of two kinds, lymphocytes and monocytes. Lymphocytes have round nucleus and monocytes have horseshoe shaped nucleus. So this is the difference between the lymphocytes and the monocytes. Children, it is very, very important. Learn these differences between the lymphocytes and monocytes. Now the next one is the granulocytes. Granulocytes means their cytoplasm contains the granules. These WBCs have larger granules in the cytoplasm. Agranulocytes, they are without the granules, but granulocytes, WBCs, have larger granules in the cytoplasm and have lobed nucleus. Lobes. See here, this is a lobed, this is one lobe, this is two lobe. See here, this is three lobed. So their nucleus is lobed. Larger granules in the cytoplasm and have lobed nucleus. These are of three types. Now, granulocytes are of three types. Neutrophils have 2 to 6 lobes of the nucleus. See, these are the neutrophils. And see the lobes here present. Here you can see 3 lobes. So these neutrophils have 2 to 6 lobes. Here we can see only 3 lobes are present in the nucleus. Basophils have bilobed or irregular nucleus. Basophils, see here, bilobed or irregular. It is irregular in shape, or here 2 lobes you can see. Either they have 2 lobes, or we can call it as the bilobed or irregular nucleus. And eosinophils have bilobed nucleus. Now here see, you can see eosinophils, they have 2 lobes in the nucleus. So this is the difference between the neutrophils, basophils and eosinophils based on the lobes present in the nucleus. Now about children, blood platelets. They are also known as thrombocytes. So underline this, children, thrombocytes. These thrombocytes, this is the biological term for the blood platelets. They help in preventing the loss of blood as they cause clotting of blood at the site of injury. So this function of thrombocyte is it help in preventing the loss of blood as they cause clotting of blood at the site of the injury. This is the function of blood platelets. See children, when you get any injury or any wound and blood is coming out of that wound, or you are bleeding, after some times at the site of that injury a clot is formed and the bleeding stops. So this clot is formed because of these blood platelets. Their main function is to form the clot, and it helps in preventing the loss of blood from the injury. They are also made in the bone marrow and have a lifespan of 8 to 14 days. So they are also made, or they are also produced in the bone marrow. RBCs are produced in the bone marrow. WBCs are also produced in the bone marrow, and these blood platelets are also produced in the bone marrow, and they have a lifespan of 8 to 14 days only. So you can see RBCs, a lifespan between 100 to 120 days. WBCs, they live from few hours to many days. And these blood platelets, their lifespan is from 8 to 14 days. There are about 2.5 lakh blood platelets in 1 cubic millimeter of blood. So in 1 cubic millimeter of blood, 2.5 lakh of blood platelets are present. So children, this is all about the blood platelets. That means the three uh, formed elements which are present in the plasma. Now see the red color. The strong red color blood which contains a lot of oxygen is called oxygenated bloods. As we have seen the difference between the oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood is of bright red color. This is because of the presence of oxygen in it. And deoxygenated blood is dark red in color, or we can call it as purple in color, because of the presence of less oxygen in the blood. The red color of the blood is due to the vast number of RBCs and protein, that is hemoglobin, present in the RBC. So the red color is due to the presence of large number, as we have seen that there are 5 million RBCs present in 1 cubic millimeter of blood. And protein hemoglobin, that is present in the RBC. Hemoglobin is present in the RBCs. There are about 5 million RBCs in 1 cubic millimeter of blood. So I told you children that there are more red blood cells than the white blood cells in our body. So children, here we end this session, and tomorrow we will be taking about a new topic, that is the blood vessels. Bye children.